Some cracking verses there. Absolutely gorgeous. I love it. What is a zither? And can I just say, if they just said, and the band, when the band play, it would save a lot of time. I can see Jordan at the back going, come on. Okay, so today we're looking at being courageous. And this account, really, to really get the most out of this account, you have to go back. As I say it again and again, you just got to keep going back. And when God delivered Israel out of Egypt, he led them through the water, and he led them into the desert, and he led them to the promised land. And before they took hold of the promised land, he said something to them. And he said, I am laying before you two roads, and I am going to go into covenant with you. Covenant is like an agreement between a more powerful party and a less powerful party. I am willing to go into agreement with you that you would be my people and I would be your God. If you want to do that, there is a road ahead and it's called blessing. And this is some of the fruit that will happen if you choose to come into agreement with me and you follow me. And it talks about all the fruit and it's all good. And it says, but if you do not, here is the other road that lays before you, the same road as everyone else. It's called the road of curses. And it's pretty pants, to be honest. He didn't actually say that, but he meant that. It is not good, it is not pretty, and you don't want to be on it. So if you come into agreement with me, and you keep the agreement, I am faithful to you, this is what it's going to look like. Good news. If you don't, this is what it's going to look like. Bad news. So they're like, oh, yes, we want that. So he was just laying before them, here's the agreement, and if you accept it, I will be your God, you will be my people, I'll give you a land of your own. Remember, they're not even a nation at this point. I will make you into a great nation, and I will lift you up so that you'll be a blessing to the whole world. They're like, we're in. And from that second onwards, they kept turning their back on God. They kept walking away from the agreement. He made it quite simple, quite clear. Follow me, all good. You don't, it's just going to go horribly wrong. And yet again and again and again, they would turn their back on him. So that he was completely faithful. He then sent his prophets to the people to remind them, to encourage them, to rebuke them, to get back in line with the living God. Because there's two roads. And they keep just refusing to listen. In fact, they killed the prophets. So God would raise up more prophets, and they would go in, and they just had this thankless task of trying to get the people to make straight their paths for the Lord. And again, it was going horribly wrong, and they were just walking further and further away from the road of blessing. And then he then sent his prophets to say this: if you keep on going as you are, you will be taken from the land that I gave you. You will be taken into exile. Do you know why they got that land in the first place? Don't answer. The reason they got that land in the first place was because the Canaanite sin had reached its fullness. When God first promised to Abraham that he would give him a son and he would create a nation out of this son and out of this old man, he said, I will give you a land of your own, but for the moment the Canaanites there, and until their sin reaches its fullness, which will be 450 years' time, they'll live there. And at the end of that 450 years, in come the Israelites. They go forward, they take it out because God goes before them, because the stench of their sin was so much, and they are driven out, and the Israelites are given the same land, but the Lord reminds them, do not let this happen to you. And in the end, they get to the point where their sin is as bad as the Canaanites. But they did it in much quicker time. It's like they got their fast-track ticket, boom, straight to the front of the ride. So he sent his prophets to say, you're going into exile. And ultimately they went into exile. And boom, straight back to this story of Daniel. Daniel is in exile. Nebuchadnezzar, who is a foreign king, he is the king of Babylon, which is the superpower of the time. I think this is around about 700 BC. I might be a couple of hundred years old out. I didn't check, but I think it's around then. It's a fair while ago. The king decides he wants to attack Israel and have it for himself. So he sends his troops, they go in, they give them a right old bashing, they raise the whole thing to the ground, they take all their trophies, they take all their treasure, they take everything out of their temple, they take it back and put it in their own temples to the little g gods, and they take the other stuff and they put it in the palace. How very lovely. Who they don't kill comes back to Babylon to be slaves. The young nobles, not the older ones, toast for them. The young nobles and young royals who are they've been educated because they're rich in comparison to everyone else, they've been well educated, they are taken back to Babylon to become wise men for the king of Babylon. They're not smart enough in his eyes, so they have to go through 3-year training. So they're basically like open arrest for these guys. They're privileged compared to everyone else. They're not complete slaves. They get fed very well. They get, so they're pampered, but there's no choice in it. It's a dictatorship, and they've just been taken over. You do what you're told. At the end of their 3-year training, they could go off and be smart guys around Babylon. But do you remember in chapter 1, when Daniel and Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, I've heard them called my shack, your shack, and a bungalow, so I might flip between the two, whatever comes out. These 4, they were given all the food from the king's table, but they knew that they'd be defiling themselves if they ate certain foods, certain meats. But it doesn't say that the others did the same. They're all in the same boat, but the others were happy to eat the meat. And what they're setting apart here is that these 4 are not just about following rules. These 4 have a relationship with the living God. That is what we're all about. We're not about following a list of rules. That should come as part of our relationship. That should naturally come out. Don't work for thanks. You should naturally be doing what you're doing out of your relationship as a response to your relationship to the living God. So they're just like, we don't want to eat that ostrich or that whatever that is because we think that will make us unclean. So we'll just have vegetables. I am not saying that you should all become vegetarians. I will never say that. But the jailer was worried because he's like, what if at the end of 10 days you guys look awful compared to the rest of them that are eating all this great big meat and making them buff and smart and clever? What if you, just on your vegetables, look really rubbish? I'm the one who gets it. And he said, Daniel said, give us 10 days, and if at the end we look worse than these Muppets, then we'll go and eat whatever you put before us. And it says that the Lord showed favor by this man. And so he gave him 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, he looked at them and was like, fair play, veggies from now on. So they just ate vegetables. They decided to sacrificially go without to honor the living God. In 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 30, God says, I will honor those that honor me. Remember that. In your life, remember that. I will honor those that honor me. So these guys honored God, and God blessed them. When it came to the time of meeting King Nebuchadnezzar, he wanted to meet all the wise guys because they're going to be his council. So he meets them all. It says, when he saw and sat with and spent time with Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, they were the 4 smartest guys in the whole of the place. They were 10 times smarter than all the other wise guys. So it all looks pretty good in chapter 1. Woo! Excellent. If they finished it there, marvelous. Chapter 2. The king wakes up one morning and he comes into his wise guys and he says, okay, boys, I had a dream last night. I need you to give me the interpretation for the dream. And, by the way, if you can't, I'm going to have you all cut into tiny little pieces. What a lovely man. So they were like, okay, my king, may you live forever. What was the dream? He's like, you got to tell me that. I'm not telling you the dream. because you'll give me any old jibber jabber. You're the wise guys. You tell me what I dreamt and the meaning. They're like, no one could do that. Not even a God could do that. We don't stand a chance. And he says, well, you're all for the chop then, aren't you? He didn't quite use those words. He probably didn't know what scissors were, but you get the point. And so all the wise blokes in the palace are flapping, and Daniel gets a whiff of it. He's like, what's the matter? What do you look so worried for? He's like, the king is going to cut us all to pieces because he wants us to interpret his dream, and he wants us to know what the dream was and then interpret it. So Daniel, being wise, goes to the king courageously, goes to the king and says, my lord, may you live forever, because he's wise. Could you just give me and my buddies a little bit more time and we'll come back to you with the answer? He's like, done. So he goes off, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. They pray like crazy, fasting and praying, and boom, God releases the answer to Daniel. Daniel praises God, and then he goes forward to the king, and he says, my lord, may you live forever. I've got the answer. Actually, I haven't got the answer, because I'm just a bloke. But God, who is God of all, has revealed the answer to me, so that you, O king, would know. He's like, okay, what is it? He says, okay, so you had a dream about a statue. This was a chuffing great statue with a gold head and gold shoulders. But its torso was made of silver. And its hips and its thighs were made of bronze. And its legs and its feet were made of iron. But beneath the iron, his feet were made of clay. And he says, that was your dream. And he doesn't get the heads up of, okay, good start. He doesn't get anything. He just cracks straight into the response. And the reason you got given that dream is this is what it means. He says, my Lord, may you live forever. The head and the shoulders of pure gold are your kingdom. You are the head and shoulders. You have a mighty, mighty superpower, and there'll be none like it. And the king's probably thinking, yeah, good start. I like that. Good man. And he says, and the next after that will come another kingdom, but they will not be as powerful as you. And there'll become another kingdom after that, and they'll not be as powerful as you. And then there'll be the last kingdom, that's one of iron and clay, and that will be brutal and powerful and strong, but it will be divided. And the feet will be smashed, and it will fall. May you live forever. That is the interpretation to your dream. The king is just like, yay! Daniel, you beauty, good one. And he raises him up to this position of administrator. Administrator is like this spiritual gift where this guy is just going to oversee the whole of the kingdom. Remember Joseph? Joseph was an administrator. He was second in power in the whole of Egypt. Administration is a spiritual gift. Just giving the thumbs up to Natalie. It is a spiritual gift. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And he is to oversee everything. So the first thing he does, because he's a wise guy, gets his three buddies and boom, bumps them up the chain. They become satraps. Not quite sure what that is, but it's a kind of higher level of wise guy than what they were. And they were put in positions in Babylon, chapter 2. Chapter 3. So that, again, end of the chapter, woo! All is well. Should we stop there? Chapter 3, the king decides he's going to have a statue built. I wonder where he got that idea. I wonder where he thought of that. He's going to get a statue of himself. Why not? He's worked hard. He earned it. It's going to be made of solid gold, 90 feet high and 9 feet wide, because he didn't want any bigger, because his ego is not that big. I think it was orange in color. He's got this ego. He's got this statue. And it's not just good enough that he made this great big statue. He wants everyone to bow down and worship it. Everybody. Doesn't matter what your faith, where you're from, what's your culture. Everyone has to bow down when they bang out the instruments. So they knock out the instruments and everyone bows down. And some of the guys notice that Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego do not bow down. So, and you kind of hear the jealousy in this. They go straight to the king. My king, may you live forever. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not bow down when they played the instruments. So the king, to be fair to the king, he calls them in and sits them down, and he has a chat with them because he knows they're 10 times smarter than all the other guys. So he has a chat with them, and he says this: I'm going to give you one more chance. I want to get Matey Boy to bang the gong, and as soon as he does, the band is going to spring into life. And as soon as they spring into life, if you bow down and worship my image, then I will let you go. Job done. We'll move on. We'll forget the whole thing ever happened. Their response: my Lord, may you live forever. We're not going to do it. Oh, this is what it says, actually. If you bow down, we'll forget it. Job done. If you don't, I'm going to throw you into a fiery furnace. What God can save you then? That's what he says. I think that was probably the crunch part for the three, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. And they respond, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. And if you throw us into the fiery furnace, our God can deliver us from that. Our God can rescue us from your fiery furnace. Can you see the courage? Our God can do that. But even if he doesn't, we will not bow down and worship your image. You kind of think, why don't you just bow down? Why don't you just bow down and pretend? Just close your eyes and wibble a little bit. Mutter. They can't. Because they're in relationship with the living God. And that is more important to them than their lives. Because they are in relationship with the living God. And this is a gauntlet that has just been laid down before them. What God can save you then? I bet that hit them like a knife. I bet it was incredibly, incredibly powerful to them. And I bet at that moment they just got a conviction right there and then, okay, never going to do this. That is integrity. We are called to be people of integrity. For integrity to stand up takes courage. You've got to mix them together. And they have the courage to say, we are never going to do it. The king, immediate response, spits teeth, is absolutely mad as fire, and he calls for the furnace to be cranked up to dial 7. And then he gets his biggest blokes in the kingdom to tie these guys up. They tie them tight, and they take them to the furnace. And when they get to the furnace, they go to push them in, and it is so hot that the blokes, the strong men who are pushing them in, just burn to a crisp at that moment. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego fall into the furnace to the floor, and the king, being really, really sick, just kind of grabs a seat to see what happens. Ooh. And then he jumps up from his seat, and he says to bloke number 1 next to him, he says, what? And he looks at the furnace. He said, didn't we throw 3 men into the furnace? Before the guy could respond, he said, but there's a 4th man in there now, and he looks like the Son of God. I've said it many times. When you look at the Old Testament, it's like a blueprint of the New Testament. You can see Jesus in the Old Testament again and again and again. And in fact, I was thinking about this. Jesus was walking along after the resurrection with 2 blokes on the road to Emmaus, 2 of the disciples. And they're looking downcast. And he says, what are you looking so downcast for? And they're like, where have you been? Like this Jesus guy, we thought he was the Messiah and blah, 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 blah. And Jesus says this, and beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explains to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. What scriptures did they have? Didn't have the New Testament. Hadn't even been lived out at that point. It's the Old Testament. The Old Testament is full of Jesus. And old Nebi, he is sat there and he is seeing this in real time. And he runs. Last week we had a rich young guy running to Jesus. This guy is running to the furnace where everyone else got burnt up. He's running, and all of his wise guys are following behind. Oh, my king. And when they get to the furnace, he goes, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out! And they walk out of the furnace, and they're like, whoa! And they realize they're not even singed. They've still got their eyebrows. They look very nice. They've all got their eyebrows. They've all got their clothes. They don't even smell of smoke. Nothing has happened to them. And the king is like, whoa. And he suddenly recognizes that the God of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego is not the little g, but the big G. He's not the little g God, but he is the big G God. And then he says something really stupid like, if anyone would say anything against the God of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, they will be cut into pieces and their house will be turned to rubble. He is a work in progress, to be fair. Faith is a journey. You wait till you get to chapter 4, you'll see it. It's glorious. They could have just saved themselves a whole lot of trouble. They could have just bowed down. It doesn't say that anyone else did that. It doesn't say that all the other nobles from Israel refused to bow down. It just says these three refused to bow down. I will honor those who honor me. And as a result, the king is blown away. He gets a revelation of the living God in a burning furnace. And as a result, God's name, big G, placed high. And as you go through Daniel, you'll see it gets higher and higher and higher. It is glorious. You and I are called to be witnesses. Doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter whether you're at school or whether you are a CEO of a company, whatever, whether you are retired, whatever. You are called to be witnesses of the living God. Witnesses of Jesus Christ, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, to whom every knee will bow and every tongue confess that he is Lord. You are his witnesses, and you, ready for a promotion, are his ambassadors. Each one of you. And he is calling you to witness to him. And you will have challenges in the home, with your family, with your workplace, with your work colleagues, in whatever situation you are in. You will have challenges where you get opportunities to either pick up the gauntlet that someone has laid down, or an opportunity to share the good news, the road of blessing with somebody. To do that, you need courage. I just want to tell you that the Holy Spirit has come to empower you and enable you to be witnesses of Jesus Christ. That is why he has come to live inside of you. And it is your call, and this is your life, and this is your go at living it out. There's no second chance. This is it. This is it. You will live forever. You will go on to glory. But you get this one chance to live out this opportunity in this body as a witness of Jesus Christ. These three had that opportunity. The other guys didn't take it. These three did. It changed a nation. It actually, read it, changed a nation, because these three guys says no. You will have gauntlets laid down. The enemy will lay them down. Your friends will lay them down. People will lay them down. And you just need to pray for the courage to stand up. Today is International Day of Prayer for the Persecuted Church. Our brothers and sisters are not just having a tricky time at work where they feel a bit cringy because they really want to say, I know, I think I might be able to help you here. Can I pray for you? And the person goes, no, you muppet. What a weirdo. They're having more than that. They're having Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego and Daniel times in our world today. I'm just going to read 3 things. And they're hard. I want you to know that. They're hard to hear. But you and I are a family. And these are our family, our brothers and sisters in Christ. And this is what they're going through today, while we sit here and have a beautiful time with the Lord. Colombia. Pastor Leader Molina, 24, had just finished preaching at his church in Caucasia, northwest Colombia, on Friday, February the 9th. As he stepped out of the building, he was shot with 5 bullets. The young man was known as a passionate preacher and active youth leader in his church and city. The region has suffered an escalation of violence in recent months as armed groups fight for control of trafficking routes. The various rebel factions involved all consider the Christian church an enemy because the gospel leads young people away from the violence and illegal activities. According to sources in the area, some Christians have fled with their families, while others are hoping for government intervention opted to remain, even in the face of danger. Despite death threats and violence, church leaders are continuing with their ministry work in the area. These are hard. Burkina Faso. On the evening of June the 27th, unidentified militants entered the village of Bani in northern Burkina Faso looking for Christians. After ordering everyone to lie on the ground, each villager was asked their name. The attackers then proceeded to search for anyone wearing Christian insignia such as a cross. 4 men were found wearing crosses: Theophile Odrago, Ernest Kusaga, and brothers David and Philip Zangrana. Upon this discovery, the 4 were taken aside and executed. Before leaving the village, the attackers burned a shop owned by David. Then they moved on to another village, Porignama, where they warned residents against calling the authorities, indicating that they would return. This latest attack brings the total number of Christians, all of whom were assassinated in similar manner, to 27 since February. This is the last one. Nigeria. A pregnant mother was killed in the village of Anka, Plateau State, on July the 15th. Margaret Wakili, 27, was bringing food to her husband in the field when 8 men, who are believed to be Fulani herdsmen, suddenly initiated an attack. The husband heard them shout, "Allahu Akbar, we have killed an infidel and we need to kill more." That day, an elderly woman from the same village was also attacked and killed. Prior to the 2 fatal tragedies in Anka, another senseless attack had taken place in the village of Tavegana. On the evening of July the 14th, Thomas Wallow was returning from choir practice with his 7-year-old son, Ngui, when they were both killed and beheaded. These alarming reports represent only a small sampling of the terrible violence that is gripping the hearts of Christians in Nigeria due to the unwarranted attacks of Fulani militants, as well as those perpetrated by members of the Boko Haram terrorist group. Prayerfully remember the great number of grieving families and friends now suffering the loss of innocent loved ones who have been ruthlessly slaughtered in Nigeria for their faith. You and I are brothers and sisters with these people. We are no different. We just happen to live in the number 1 country in the world for, I can't even remember the word. I talked about it last week. Sorry? Quality of life. Thank you. That's the difference. Location. They say it means everything, don't they? Our location is what is different to them. They live and breathe just like you and me. They are brothers and sisters in Christ. They worship the same God. They go for the same stuff, but they have everything ramped up. And what are we afraid of? Looking stupid in front of our work colleagues. I'm not putting us down, but the enemy is putting them down. What can we do about it? We can pray. It's the only thing we can do, and it's the most powerful thing that we can do is we can pray. You are called to be witnesses of Jesus Christ, and so are they. There is no difference, just location. So we are now going to go into a time of prayer, and we're just going to have some quiet prayer. We're not going to play any music. We're just going to have a time of quiet prayer. I have got here... Oh. Yes. Okay, we'll do it this way. I have got here... These are testimonies of the things that I've just been reading out. I'll put these ones in this pew. These are testimonies of those. We're going to watch a video in a minute. Once we've watched the video, I want us to just come up quietly. I just want us to come up, and I want us to take one of these, and I want us to go back to our pew, and I want us to just pray quietly for them. And it may be just like a couple of minutes, just quietly praying for a couple of minutes, which is not what we normally do. And after that, I will come up and I will lead us in some more intercessory prayers. But I want you to take it with you. And if you want to take more than one, take more than one afterwards. Make sure there's enough for everyone. And I want you to pray and pray for whatever situation you pick up. Can we just watch the video, please?